Well, hi there, and welcome back to my freak show, starring just me and my special guest, Mr. Allergy, who will make appearances whenever he feels like it. Um, Tonight, because of certain things that are going on, I've decided to do a revisit, which is the first one I've ever done. Um, this movie was one of the first movies that I ever did when I started using my channel for this, which I have found so fun, and that is, reviewing my favorite movies and talking about them. Um, so, yeah, we're going to do that. Um, Again, if you're new here, my name is Rusty. This is my channel where I talk about my favorite movies and my favorite music. And we are going to revisit a little movie called All the Boys Love Mandy Lane. Who's that? The most hated woman in the world right now? Well, I've always been very good at separating the artist from the art, and I have no problem saying this whatsoever. Um, this movie, which is why it was one of the first movies that I ever did, was one. It was one of the first few movies that I reviewed on the or talked about on this channel, was because regardless of now or then or what anybody says, All the Boys Love Mandy Lane sits in my top 30 horror movies ever made throughout history since filming began. Yes, believe it or not. All the Boys Love Mandy Lane, again, is in my top 30 horror movies ever. So, it's safe to say that I love it. And Amber Heard, her performance as Mandy Lane, is one of my favorite performances in a horror movie by anyone ever. So, we're going to talk about this movie just to show that regardless of what I think about her right now, which is quite obvious, I it has no effect whatsoever on this. The only difference between prior to this trial and now is that I have a new joke about this movie. And that is, I always wondered and celebrated this brilliant performance. And now I think I know why she was so brilliant as Mandy Lane. And that's because she was pretty much playing herself. That's my joke now. Is that, well, geez, I think I see why she was so brilliant as Mandy Lane. She didn't have to do much acting, she just played her damn self. So, yeah, that's what I actually believe. So, all the boy, all the boys love Mandy Lane has a weird release. It was filmed in 2006 and it was released in Europe. Um, but it was never introduced to North American audiences or worldwide audiences. Um, I don't really know why that is the case, but that is the case. Instead, the director remastered it, edited it, and the movie was actually released to North American audiences in the world in 2013. So, damn near 7 years after it was filmed before we actually got to see what, you know, movie gossip and rumor had heard about this great, wonderful little horror movie. What happened to it? Why did we never get to see it? So we actually didn't get to see it and this release until 2013. So it's hard to know. Like, I am International Movie Database says it was released in 2006, but it wasn't. It was filmed in 2006. It wasn't released until 2013, so it's still a relatively new movie as far as the release date goes. Um, it's one of those weird ones where it's supposed to be an aught movie, but it's actually an aught tens movie because it wasn't released until deep into the 2010s. So it's kind of interesting, the release date. But it was directed by Jonathan Levine. I would like to know why he did this. It was written by Jacob Forman, and it stars Amber Heard, Anson Mount, and Whitney Abel. And yeah, so we're going to talk about that. One of my top 30 horror movies ever made. All the boys love Mandy Lane. Mandy Lane is Amber Heard. Amber Heard is Amber Lane. Amber Lane, Mandy Lane. So yeah. All right, this movie. Okay, yeah, I can talk about all that later. This movie opens with Mandy arriving at school. She has, let's say, blossomed. She is arriving at school and she's walking down the high school um, lockers, the hallways. And all the boys and all the girls are giving her the eye because she really is stunning in this movie. She is definitely a stunningly beautiful girl. And I suppose sexy to those interested in that sort of thing. But regardless of whether you're sexually attracted, she is certainly a just stunning individual in this movie. So you have all of them looking at her, staring at her, looking at her up and down, top of her head to the bottom of her feet, and you can tell the lust and envy, and all that kind of stuff. She then meets up with a just gorgeous guy named Emmett, who is her friend, and they talk for a little bit. They go out into the parking lot where you see the typical high school jock. Um, what's his name? Dylan? Yeah, Dylan. And he's got, his goofy jock friends in his truck, and they're, woo-hooing her, and they invite her to a pool party, which she refuses to go to unless her friend Emmett can come. So her and Emmett go to this pool party where we see the typical behavior. Emmett is obviously antisocial and screwed up and bitter, and he ends up getting in a fight with Dylan. Um, he goes up onto the roof, Emmett, where Dylan comes up later during the party. Now, Dylan is drunk, and Emmett's been drinking a little bit, but not enough to really matter. Where he then starts kind of mind fucking Dylan about Mandy Lane. Oh, there's nothing special about you. You're just a jock. You're gonna have to be special to get her attention. And he's like, well, what? What am I supposed to do? So Emmett talks him into being butch. To impress Mandy Lane, you should dive. You should jump from the roof to the pool. So he does that like a dumb jock would. He does that and just cracks the whole back of his skull open when he hits the pool. And he's dead. The movie then moves ahead to 9 months later, where obviously none of them got into any trouble. I mean, you couldn't prove anything anyway. It's not like Emmett pushed him off the roof. But you see Amber, Mandy Lane. We're gonna have a problem with this. I can see it right now. Um, So we see Mandy Lane doing her, track star thing. It's 9 months later, so I guess it's the next year in school. Emmett comes up to her and he's got this little book with him, a little journal looking thing. He tries to talk to her about it, but she sort of pushes him away when the other friends come because it turns out everyone was there. So they all kind of blame Emmett, and it looks as though Mandy Lane doesn't want to have anything to do with Emmett. It doesn't look like they're friends anymore. Um, so you're introduced to that jock group that you had seen at the beginning. You're introduced to Bird and Red and the upper crust crowd is what it is, and they're inviting her. Red is inviting her to his ranch. He's got rich parents. He's got a ranch, and he is inviting her to come to a select little party with him and spend the weekend at his ranch. Um, you've got Bird and Jake, Chloe, Marlon, Red, Mandy. These are all, that's the core group that goes to this. So we have our core victim group right there. So they end up going out, and we get to see them go there, and they arrive. They steal some beer from a beer distributor at a local store. Um, they get out there, and the only other person that we're introduced to is the ranch hand. I'll see his name sooner or later here. Garth. His name is Garth. So we get, to see them. Now, we have the typical behaviors. They go quasi skinny dipping with just their underwear. Missed opportunity right there. Um, but they go do that. Um, they almost get bit by a snake. I think Garth shoots the shotgun at the snake in the water. It's right there with them. Obviously, a what we call a moccasin down here. And that's where does this take place in Texas? I think this takes place in Texas. So yeah, they have moccasins too. But that's what it looked like. It looked like a moccasin, and they love the water, and they will kill your ass in the water. But so Garth shoots the snake while they're swimming, where we then see that Mandy kind of has an eye for him, which once you see him, well, I mean, if you're swinging that direction. Um, so we see that Mandy likes him, but we also see that there seems to be a first person's perspective of somebody watching them, you know. So so Mandy ends up, well, we go back and they have their little drunken party. They're doing things such as whippets. Um, they're doing smoking a lot of weed. They're drinking a lot of alcohol. So we have a lot of really interesting drug scenes, atmosphere, very psychedelic stuff that happens, and um, they're sitting around having like truth or dare kind of stuff, and Jake gets insulted because they start making fun. I think they ask a question about who's got the smallest one here, and all of the girls point to Jake, which of course upsets him, and he takes off and leaves. Uh, Whereas Mandy ends up going to ask Garth if he wants to come to the party, you know. But he says that the boy's parents wouldn't like that, the ranch hand mixing with these teenagers, high schoolers, which I suppose I could understand. I mean, that's a good way to get yourself in trouble, I think. if you're a ranch hand somewhere and a bunch of teenagers are drunk and on drugs and they come and ask you to join the party, I wouldn't do that if I were you. That doesn't smell like a fun time. So Marlon, she leaves to go find Jake because he has stormed off like a little bitch. So she goes to find him, and she ends up finding him in the barn where they make out, and he rudely refuses to make out back, if you know what I mean, in an oral fashion. So um, she calls him all kind of names. He goes back into the house, and she doesn't get the chance because there is someone stalking them. Because in the barn, she is attacked and held down where this. I started to say kill scene, but this almost kill scene, you think it's a kill scene. How it couldn't have been a kill scene, I don't know. But he, like, this person, like, stuffs the shotgun, a double barrel shotgun, into her mouth, down her throat, and then cracks her jaw with it. It's it's a good scene. So he, like I said, he goes back in there. Chloe, she's got her own mental issues, and she's upstairs, and we see her flashing Garth down there, and he ignores it, which kind of pisses her off. And let me catch up. The lights all go out. So Bird goes outside. They talk about, well, somebody's got to go outside to turn the generator back on, which is very Friday the 13th and not something I would ever do. But so he goes out there to turn the generator back on because no one else will. So he volunteers to go do that, and we get a nice little jump scare scene, but it turns out not to be the killer. It turns out to be Garth, who then informs him, like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I came out here to turn the generator on. And he's like, dude, we're on the grid. This house, this property is on the grid. There is no generator. This generator isn't for the house. You've been mind fucked. So he leaves, and Bird goes back inside and lets them all know that somebody has just fucked with us. Well, it turns out it was Jake. Jake, when he came back into the house, he had went down and turned the fuse off. So he had messed with the fuse box. So I think it's Chloe that sees someone standing outside the window and starts having a fit because they're all fucked up. I mean, we're talking Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, 1960s psychedelic type fucked up. So, she thinks she sees someone outside and starts having a fit about it. Red goes outside, nobody's there, and then Jake takes the gun and then takes off because everybody's kind of mad at him for turning off the lights and because of his earlier behavior. So he takes off for two different reasons. One, he's going to see if he can find Marlon, and two, he's going to go swimming at the creek where they had swam earlier. So he goes down there and he gets to the creek, and he sees Marlon sitting on the shore. Now, I thought, rightly so, that she was dead after what we witnessed, but she's only just about dead. She can't speak or anything. I mean, her whole head's been like cracked and all, so she's definitely on her way out. So he walks up to the body, or walks up to Marlon, and gets up close enough to her. She doesn't speak or anything, and he grabs her head and turns it around, at which point she gurgles and spits blood everywhere. Um, he freaks out, and then he turns around, and when he turns around, the killer is standing there, and it's Emmett. So this is when we learn that Emmett is the killer. Emmett is the one that had did this. We didn't even know he was there. So Emmett then tries to shoot Jake, who jumps into the water and stays under for as long as he can. And then I guess he thought that the boy had gone, that Emmett had gone, and he gets back out, starts to walk up to the shore, and Emmett shoots him right through the head. So he's dead, and then Emmett, who is a psycho from the dark side, saying all of this weird stuff, and then he walks up and he finishes off Marlon by blowing her away as well. So Garth has tried to go in there and be the adult. He's went in there and told them, that they all need to chill the fuck out. That, this isn't acceptable. That he is the one that was told by Red's father that, if shit goes down, it's going to be his responsibility. So he's like, y'all have got to chill this party out. About that time, the truck that Jake was driving, which we now know can't be him, comes up to the house, and they run out. They open up the front door and they run out there to what the hell are you doing? And Jake, well, he's dead. Emmett fires fireworks towards them from the Jeep, and so they scream about that, and what the hell is your problem? What are you doing? This pisses off Garth even more, who comes stomping into the house. If I hear, you've already got me pissed off with gunshots. Now this is just too much. So he's going to go and call Red's parents, call his dad. They beg him not to, including Mandy Lane, who's like, please don't. We'll all stop. What they didn't realize is that Bird, he had ran out of the house and was chasing what he thought was Jake through the field. He manages to get up to him and sees that it's Emmett. Emmett turns to him and is like, hey man, what's up? And Bird is like, what are you doing here? And they end up fighting, where Emmett drags a butcher knife right across his eyes. So he's crawling blind, and Emmett gets up on him and stabs him to death real nice and ugly. The next morning, so I guess who you got left now? You've got Mandy, you've got Chloe, you've got Red, and you've got Garth. Everybody else is dead, but none of the living ones know that. So the next morning, Garth goes in there and is talking to Mandy, who is falling in and out of sleep at the breakfast table in the kitchen. And he hears noise, and it's like it's a tape. And he recognizes his own voice, and he goes upstairs to check the tape, and somebody has obviously went and gotten his therapy tapes from his room, from his little cabin that he lived in. And when he gets back downstairs, after turning that off, he gets back downstairs, and Mandy Lane picks her head up off the table, and it is like, what? Is everything okay? And there's blood all in her hair, where Emmett had ran his fingers through her hair, and there's a message on the fridge. So now they know that something's going on, that they all need to get the hell out of there. Let's get to my truck and get the hell out of here because something's going on. And when they open up the front door, Garth is shot. Bam. He is shot like right through the shoulder. And Red and Chloe freak out. Mandy freaks out. Garth is shot on the floor. She tells them to run. So Chloe and Red are like, wait a second. Chloe's car is down at the end of the lane um, because she wouldn't bring it onto the ranch, so it's down at the main highway at the gate because she didn't want to bring it onto the ranch because her dad would kill her for getting mud and cow shit and stuff all over the car. So she had left her car down at the entrance to the ranch. So that's what they're trying to do, is escape to her car. They do manage to get to her car where they have this little moment and I think they kiss and then boom, Red is shot and like blood goes all over Chloe and Red falls onto the ground. He's gurgling and crying. It was an emotional. I hate when they leave him alive. I hate when they leave him alive and they're crying and begging and realizing that they're fucked. And that's what it was. So, Red is shot and he's laying there crying and carrying on. And that's when Chloe sees Emmett standing over there. She kind of realizes who he is and she starts running back to the house. So, as she's trying to get back to the house, going through the hay fields and all this kind of stuff, she finds Bird. She finds his body propped up against the hay, a hay bale, and the big round ones. So she finds his body, freaks her out even more. She's running towards the house. Now, meanwhile, Mandy has been trying to take care of Garth. And Garth tells her to go to his room, to his cabin, and get his keys and help him get to the car and so that they can escape. So she does that. She goes into Garth's cabin where she finds this big, horrific butcher knife covered in blood and comes back out, finds the keys, comes back out, and is walking across the yard when she hears Chloe screaming. So she looks and sees Chloe running across the field and coming up the trail, and she stops and she turns to her and hollers at her to calm down and come to her, to come to her. About the time that she gets close enough to her, she just like grabs her like to help her, but not really, because she sees Emmett standing behind her and she runs Chloe through. With that big giant butcher knife, she runs Chloe right through, like all the way through, like come out her back kind of through. And you're like, what the fuck? And then Emmett just stands there and looks at her as Chloe, it's a nice death scene, falls to the ground and dies. And then she looks at Emmett and she's like, what took you so long? So that's when you're like, oh man, that was fucked. You tricked me, Mr. Director. So her and Emmett, they've been in this shit the whole fucking time together. So he pulls out this book, the one that we had seen back at the track at school. He pulls out this book and, tells her that he's ready, that it's all been written. And it turns out that this book is a manifesto. We've seen and heard a lot of those lately. But it is a manifesto, which he says is for the copycats and the serial killer fans. Um, so they had planned this all along. Now, and they have a suicide pact. They were going to kill everyone here and then do a Bonnie and Clyde or Romeo and Juliet or whatever. No, well, no, neither one of those because they're not together that way. They're not lovers. They're just friends. So um, they have a suicide pact. The Columbine boys, maybe that. That's better. Yeah, that's a lot better. So her and Emmett are like the Columbine boys, right? They have this suicide pact. They're going to kill all these people, and then leave their manifesto after they commit suicide about why they did this. So they think everyone's dead. Chloe was the last one. I noticed that Mandy doesn't mention the fact that Garth, whom Emmett thinks he shot and killed, is still alive and well. Well, not well, but you know what I mean. That he's still alive, but Mandy doesn't mention that. And, you know, they start talking about how they're going to do it, that, she's going to take all these pills, and he then wants her to shoot him with the shotgun. So she's like, well, okay. But that's when she kind of like asks him, well, you know, we did all of this right. We did all of this to stand up against um, school attitudes or something, her psychosis. I'm trying not to mix it up because, okay, I'll go ahead and say it. Her psychosis is the fact that she is not wanted for herself. What's the name of this movie? All the Boys Love Mandy Lane. She has this thing about nobody wanting her. They didn't want her till after she blossomed and turned into this stunning, sexy creature. Nobody wanted her. They just wanted her stuff, if you know what I mean. Now, this is where Emmett fucks up because what made her stop and look at him funny was when he said, I did it all for you. And that's not supposed to be why they did this. They were the Columbine boys. They were making a statement, right, in their psychotic minds. They were supposed to be doing this for the reasons that they had discussed and the disgust that they feel for the world and people, not because he had the hots for her. So she reaches over and kisses him on the mouth, and he responds like, that's what I've wanted all my life. That's what I've wanted. In other words, you're just like all the other boys. You didn't do all of this for a statement. You didn't do all of this for the reasons discussed. You did it all because you got the hots for me. And there you go. You're just like all the other boys. So she's like, I thought that's what it was. And therefore she drops the pills out of her hands. And she like backs out right there. Well, as you can imagine, Emmett is like not having that at all. And I totally got it when it happened because when she tested him, which is what she did when she kissed him, she thought you were a friend, a psychotic lunatic friend, but Instead, you're just like all the rest. You just want to do it for me. And he freaks out. You can't back out, blah, blah, blah. And oh God, it was so gross. There was a giant pit where, because a bunch of the cows had gotten whatever cows get, not mad cow disease, but that thing that you have to kill them all if they get it. I don't can't remember what it's called, but they, you know, Garth had talked about that earlier, that he had had to put down a whole bunch of the cows that had that disease. And so there was this giant pit where all of these rotting, decomposing cow body parts were, cows were. And they fell into that as they are fighting because he's trying to kill her ass. She manages to get the gun. There's this wacky, wacky fight, all taking place in cow guts. Ugh. But they are fighting and carrying on. She manages to get the gun away from him, and he is trying to machete her with the machete. And she grabs this big piece of wood, and she keeps blocking the machete with the wood. Finally, he hits the wood so hard that the bottom of the machete blade sticks in it, leaving you with basically a big gigantic bat with a nice big machete sticking out of the top, nice and firm. So she manages during this fight to get him down, at which point she hacks the fuck out of him with this, I guess you could call it a DIY axe, you know? Or scythe? Yeah, more like that. Sling blade, more like a sling blade. Because it's a big giant stick with a giant machete sticking out of it. So she hacks him to death with that. And then she goes back to Garth and helps him get into the car. Because you think she's fisting to kill him with the butcher knife that she had killed Chloe with. So you think she's fisting to kill him, and she walks up to him, and instead she stabs the ground beside him, at which point he comes to, and she helps him into the car, and they drive off, the survivors of this horrible incident, with Emmett being left the sole perpetrator. And she gets away with it as far as the movie goes. Now, there is one thing that I thought about, and that is, what about that manifesto? I guess I'd have to go and like rewatch it for the 20th time to try to see, because I don't think anything was mentioned about it. So that was kind of like, I guess, the one and only thing that I would wonder about the movie, and that is that, now I remember him talking about it, and he didn't mention that she was in it. He mentioned all of the stuff that he had wrote in it, because I don't think that she actually knew about the manifesto. Because remember this. When she was running down the track before they went to the ranch, he came up and told her, hey, I've got something to show you. And he had this book. And her little friends came up, and her friends came up, and I don't think that she knew. Because until she killed Chloe, and Emmett was standing there, and she was like, what took you so long? I think that was the first time that she actually, he said, because I think she said, what's that? And that's when he said it was his manifesto for the copycats and the serial killer news reporters, the true crime shows. So I don't. He never said anything about her being in it. It was just his thoughts, ramblings, drawings, and stuff like that he had created for the copycats and the serial killer documentaries. Um, I guess they wanted fame, or he wanted fame. So I don't think she knew about the journal, and they never really gave any indication that she was in that journal or that he was writing about her in that journal. So if he didn't, which is the way it looks, and if she didn't know about the journal, then everything's clear. She got away with this shit, which is, I think, what they wanted you to take away from it. So, there we go. Why is this movie in my top 30 horror movies of all time? Because it's fucking brilliant. Amber Heard is brilliant in this movie. This story is brilliant. The kills are brilliant. But most importantly, the reason this movie makes my top 30 is because the director, Jonathan Levine, he made this movie look like it was filmed in 1978. For real. The cinematography in this movie is just fantastic. It is, it's steeped in sepia, like this yellowish grain. Um, the shots, the psychedelic parts where they were all doing all the drugs. Um, this movie looks like it was filmed in 1978 intentionally. It's perfect. Um, and I don't mean like it's grainy or has film problems and it looks like an old movie. No, I mean it looks like what Quentin Tarantino did with The Hateful Eight, where he decided to go back and film in '64. Um, yeah. So the the cinematography, the atmosphere. This movie looks so unique, and it looks like it was filmed alongside Texas Chainsaw, but a lot better quality, and Black Christmas and Alien. It looks like it was filmed in the late '70s, which is phenomenal because you can tell it was done on purpose. The shots, the angles, the color saturation, everything, the sepia tone that it has. It is just fantastic. The story, writer by Jacob Forman, the story, I didn't see that coming. Um, they didn't really give me any hint that that was coming. They didn't hold it out, and this is one of the things that I think worked really good about it. They didn't hold out the secret long enough for you to figure it out. That's what I liked about it. Now, if they'd have gave me 30 minutes more to wonder who was knocking all of these people off, um, it might have crossed my mind. But I think that they did a perfect amount of time that you had not come to from the time you knew someone was watching them and they started getting killed to the time you discover at the creek that it's Emmett. Um, enough time had passed for you to begin to wonder who it was, but not develop any ideas of who it was because they didn't give you enough information. So when the reveal came of who it was, you didn't really have enough time to figure it out. It was probably 20 minutes, 25 minutes. You know, a lot of people want to wait till the very end, and by that time, a lot of, especially if you're a cinephile or a horror buff, a lot of people would figure out or at least get some ideas and not be quite as surprised. Instead, I think they did it pretty perfectly in that you did not know because you didn't have time to play with possibilities in your head. It gave you just the right amount of time before you got the reveal that it was Emmett. And the rest of the movie, because why? You may ask. But you should know why. Because that's not the real reveal, you see. This may be a slasher, but the reveal wasn't Emmett. Emmett being the killer was only the mini reveal. The reveal was that Mandy Lane was the person who not only killed a couple herself at the end, but was in on it the whole time. So I think that's why it worked so perfectly, is because there wasn't a reveal. There was two. They did the first reveal, which might have left people wondering, well, damn, you let the cat out of the bag and there's still 40 minutes left. But that just puts you off as well. It puts you off guard because you thought the reveal had been revealed. You weren't expecting a second reveal. So I think that's why it worked. So that's it. Um, they ride off into the sunset, I guess, going to the hospital. Going to hospital, and Amber got away with it. Mandy got away with it. Let's hope Amber doesn't get away with it. But in this movie, she got away with it. But yeah. So, like I said, the recent events have absolutely nothing to do with that, with, you know, this piece of art. Um, my feelings about the actress, Amberlynn, is obvious. So, my feelings about the actress, which is why I wanted to revisit this movie, is despite that, this movie is still one of the my top 30 horror movies ever made of all time, and the fact that it stars Amber Heard has nothing to do with the fact that Amber Heard did an absolutely brilliant performance. Now, it gave me a new joke that she didn't have to really act because she was pretty much just being herself, um, which is just a joke. But in either event, I wanted to do it to show that I can separate the art from the artist, and this movie did not lose any points with me. I was thrilled to watch it again, and I've watched it probably 20 times since 2013, and it's one of my top 30 horror movies ever made. I should do that list. I'll do that list sometime. All the Boys Love Mandy Lane, starring Amber Heard, Anson Mount, and Whitney Abel. Written by Jacob Forman and directed by Jonathan Levine. And I will see you in the next video. Up next, Johnny. We're going to do Johnny. We're going to do one of my favorite Johnny movies next. And yeah, so I'm going to do that. And thank you all very much for stopping by. If you've got any comments about this movie or anything else, I don't care. Let me know. Um, always remember you are a very, 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 very special and unique individual, and don't ever let anyone take that away from you. Um, no matter what anybody is saying to you or about you, it is the truth. You know, it's the truth, and I greatly appreciate you taking the time to listen to me blather on. Love you, miss you, bye, and stay scary and keep screaming very, very loudly. You know, but what? Only when appropriate, right? Love you, miss you, bye. See you in the next one. Ta ta. My Johnny Gear. I go into somebody's face with this shit, you're going to see more than a little red spot, okay? That's all I got to say, all right, about that issue. I go into your face with these, like Johnny wears. Ooh, I got a little something. No, 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 no. We ain't even going to do it. Bye.